I always gotta thank Family Guy because I never really knew how to pronounce Cool Whip, and because of them, I learned. So, shout out to learning.
Number 10, Chris the Future Criminal. In an episode of Family Guy, Chris performs a recreation of the infamous scene from The Silence of the Lambs where Buffalo Bill is dancing naked in front of the mirror with a scarf. For those unfamiliar with the movie, Buffalo Bill is a criminal who abducts women, locks them in a pit, and forces them to put lotion on their skin so that he can use it to create dresses. As disturbing as this may sound, it's not just a mere reference to the film. Interestingly, Seth Green, the voice actor for Chris, actually based his portrayal of the character on Buffalo Bill himself. So this connection between the two characters begs the question, how far will the writers go with this relationship? Could we potentially see a future episode where Chris has a basement filled with bodies? Would be pretty interesting. Number 9, Peter saved Lois's life. Reddit user Lieutenant Lemonade proposed a theory that Peter saved Lois from a life of depression and potentially worse. It's mentioned many times in the past episodes that Lois was a substance addict in her past days as a young adult. She also has shown bad tendencies such as being kleptomaniac, who is someone unable to resist the urge to steal. On top of that, her father was rich but always seemed too busy and would often neglect a young Lois. Being from a rich family meant that it was unlikely she faced the consequences for her actions. So picture this. A young, rowdy girl with no discipline and an addiction to substances. It almost seems like a recipe for disaster, all until Peter comes along. Peter was mentally challenged at the time, so this gave a misdirected Lois an opportunity to take care of someone, which also slowed down her life in a good way. She had to commit to caring for her husband and then to her children, which made her realize that she doesn't have the time to be doing all these rebellious things. So in a way, Peter saved her life without her even knowing it. Number 8, Stewie is a clone. According to a popular theory, Stewie is actually a clone of an evil genius. The identity of this mastermind is still unknown, but some speculate that it could be a German scientist from the 1940s, while others believe it might be someone from the future who sent their DNA back in time to create the perfect weapon for world domination. Stewie's impressive arsenal of gadgets and weapons are far beyond what any normal person would have access to. He possesses technology that is more advanced than any military in the world, allowing him to phase through dimensions and travel through time. Stewie has also shown himself to be a formidable foe, waging war against all his enemies. Although his character has been softened since the show originally aired, Stewie was once known for constantly plotting to end his mother's life. Nevertheless, there is no denying his super level intellect, which he has used to outsmart and outmaneuver his enemies time and time again. Is Stewie really a clone of an evil genius? Number 7, the chicken is the Grim Reaper. The infamous chicken fight scenes in Family Guy are some of the show's most iconic moments, with the feathered foe determined to take down Peter at any cost. But while we've seen the character of the Grim Reaper on the show, there are actually some fans who believe that the chicken actually represents him, rather than just being a mere rival for Peter. According to this theory, the chicken's relentless pursuit of Peter is actually a metaphor for the Reaper's unrelenting quest for souls. Despite numerous attempts to end Peter's life, the bumbling patriarch always manages to come out on top, much to the chicken's frustration. But what if the chicken's true goal is not to end Peter, but rather to claim his soul? If the chicken is actually the Grim Reaper in disguise, then his ultimate mission could be to capture Peter's soul, the one soul that has so far managed to elude him. And if he succeeds, it could mean the end of Quahog as we know it. Number 6, Joe can actually walk. Joe is just known on the show as the character glued permanent to his wheelchair due to an accident in the past. Joe is always seen to act over the top emotionally, and is also used to insert awkward and some people find it funny humor, often regarding his disability. However, many fans believe that all of this is just a cover up and he's actually able to walk. In many different episodes, Joe explains the origin of his disability, but each story is different from one another. In one backstory, Joe mentions that he got disabled due to fighting with the Grinch on a rooftop. In another backstory, he says that criminal Bobby Briggs is the one who shot him in the legs. Every story is different, and it just seems that he can't keep his story straight, which could mean he's potentially lying. And just if you didn't believe us, here's another one of his moments where he miraculously walked. Number 5, Brian is the real writer of the show. In season 12, episode 9, named Peter Problems, we hear Brian say, quote, "I have a job. I'm a writer. I'm working now. See this? All of this? This is the raw material of a picture of life that I'm gonna paint with words." This got fans thinking if Brian could be the writer of the show. We know that Seth MacFarlane writes the show in real life, and he uses his own voice to play Brian Griffin. He doesn't change it or anything. This could explain why Brian is often seen as the voice of reason or as the one to dispute arguments and feuds between different characters. Most of the exclusive and Depper Family Guy episodes are the ones with Stewie and Brian, and since Brian experienced these firsthand, it makes sense that these episodes are in more detail than any other. Number 4, the Twin Towers. First of all, rest in peace to all those affected by this disaster, but did you know that Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane was due to catch a flight that was destined to hit the Twin Towers, and his reason for skipping out is because he was hungover and overslept? Because I didn't know that. It was such an important event that fans thought it was the direct inspiration for the film's plot of Stewie having a near passing away experience. You remember the scene where Stewie would get crushed by a falling lifeguard seat? The scene is peppered with snippets of dialogue that may or may not reference the falling towers, such as Stewie saying, quote, "Well then, it seems there's only one thing to do. I must ensure that I never had the close call with that lifeguard tower in the first place. And yes, I did it. I stopped the tower from falling." This last line stuck out to me a lot because the falling tower was mentioned throughout the entirety of the episode. Number 3, Joe Swanson was the Tick. The Tick is an animated TV show that aired on Fox between 2001 and 2002, which starred Patrick Warburton, who also voices Joe Swanson in Family Guy. The two characters share many similarities, including a muscular frame, a big chin, a dramatic personality, and of course the same voice. Now, a Reddit user by the name of Mr. DS speculates that Joe may have become the Tick on the side because he wasn't doling out enough justice as a cop. The Tick's costume may even grant the wearer superhuman abilities, as he possesses super strength and never gets injured. Perhaps the costume even has the power to heal Joe's paralysis. Fans of the theory have pointed out that Joe's personality fits perfectly with that of the Tick, who is known for his quirky and upbeat attitude. Additionally, both characters have had their fair share of battles, with Joe frequently getting into dangerous situations as a police officer and the Tick fighting supervillains on his show. Number 2, same dinner. Have you ever noticed that the Griffin family in Family Guy eats the same exact dinner every night? Mashed potatoes, roast beef, and a pile of peas seem to be their go-to meal. It's no wonder that Peter Griffin can't seem to shed any pounds. But have you ever considered the reason behind this monotonous meal? Some fans speculate that the reason the Griffins eat the same thing every night is because they are prisoners. That's right, the entire show takes place in a basement on a set that someone has constructed. The family has been kidnapped to act out a sitcom in someone's home. But why would the kidnapper choose to serve the same meal every night? Perhaps it's because he wants to maintain control over every aspect of the family's lives, even down to what they eat. Number 1, Stewie's Dilemma. Many fans of the show have debated whether Stewie has a crush on Brian, and if you know, you know. While some viewers believe that Stewie's affection for Brian is romantic in nature, others argue that it's simply a case of Stewie mistaking his feelings of paternal or platonic love for romantic love. According to this theory, Stewie's dysfunctional upbringing has left him with a skewed understanding of love and relationships. Like his sister Meg, who is often shown to develop sudden infatuations due to her lack of love and affection at home, Stewie may be confusing his feelings of closeness and admiration for Brian as romantic love. However, this theory suggests that Stewie's connection to Brian is more akin to that of an uncle or second father figure rather than a romantic interest. And in later seasons, Peter and Lois are shown to be distant from their children. This could lead Stewie to seek out emotional connections with other family members, such as Brian.
Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have the chicken fight. Let's talk about this chicken that Peter seems to be having a Michael Bay-esque fighting scene every single time they encounter one another. This strange feud all began when the chicken gave Peter an expired coupon, and from there, it escalated into increasingly destructive fights that involved innocent bystanders, vehicles, and even buildings. Although it just appears as a normal fight scene, Reddit user TrevorJ414 made claims that these fights represents depression as a whole. Sorry to bring it down, but this is the theory. Think about it. Depression can strike at any time without warning. It can lead to destructive behaviors and coping mechanisms, much like the chaos that ensues during Peter's battles with the chicken. And just when you think you've won the battle against depression and you're all happy, it can sneak up on you again, much like the way the chicken always seems to come back to life after each fight. You know what I'm talking about. Every single time it opens the eye, show up the scene. At our number 9 spot, we have In Peter's Mind. Ever wonder how the Griffin family manages to escape with so much without facing any consequences? Well, according to a theory created by a Reddit user B0308, it's all in Peter's head. This theory begins with Meg, who in this alternate reality was a popular and beautiful teenage girl who cared deeply for her younger brother Chris. I know, Pretty crazy. But it is said that Chris in this universe suffers from a multitude of mental issues due to the lack of oxygen he had at birth. Then one night after heavy drinking, Meg crashed the car while driving her brother home. Unable to cope, Lois then took her own life while pregnant with their third child, who Peter named Stewie. Then this is when Peter descended into straight insanity and then created this world in his head where his family was still alive. Peter resents Meg for causing the deaths of everyone around him, which kind of explains his relationship with her.
Yeah, you're the new me!
Shut up, Meg.
Stewie's hyperintelligence is a creation of Peter's imagination, and his resentment towards Lois is reflected in Stewie's constant planning for her demise. Peter himself was a highly intelligent man, but in this world, he has turned himself into a complete idiot. The family dog Brian is therefore a representation of Peter's intelligent side. Cleveland, Quagmire, and Joe are real people in Peter's life, but their appearances in the show are representations of their visits to Peter in the mental hospital. Cleveland stops visiting Peter, leading to the creation of his own spin-off show. Number 8, not related. Now, there is a theory that has been brewing for some time regarding the Griffin family. Specifically, some fans have speculated that Peter may not be the biological father of his 3 children, Stewie, Meg, and Chris. And at first glance, you're probably thinking, this ain't a surprise. I mean, look at all his kids. They don't look like Peter at all, with the exception of Chris. And yeah, there's no denying that. It wasn't until an episode in season 15 that this theory gained serious momentum. In this episode, Peter donates some sperm, and the resulting offspring bears a striking resemblance to him. This begs the question, if Peter's biological children look so much like him, why don't Stewie and Meg share the same traits? Some fans have taken this as evidence that the 3 children are the product of Lois's many affairs over the years. And although this isn't confirmed, we all know Lois's past was pretty colorful, so this theory is definitely one that could be true. At a number 7 spot, we have Stewie manipulating time. Have you ever wondered why Stewie Griffin is still a 1-year-old infant after 20 years of the show? Cause whatever his anti-aging routine is, I need to get on that ASAP. Back to the theory, we all know he has a time machine that allows him to travel back and forth in time. It's said by Reddit user Infinity Scientist that Stewie uses this to keep his age the same while everyone around him is slowly growing up. And surprisingly, if you pay close attention, the characters do age, but very slowly. For instance, Meg started the series at 16 years old and is now 18, while Chris was 13 at the beginning of the show and is now 15. Lois turned 43 in an episode where she had a midlife crisis, and Peter claimed he was 58 a few seasons ago. Brian started the series at 7 and celebrated his 10th birthday in a recent season. So why does Stewie do this in the first place? Well, he could have chosen to do this because he's afraid of the responsibilities of adulthood, and this could be confirmed. Because in Stewie Griffin, The Untold Story, Stewie gets to meet his future version of himself. While Stewie does eventually prevent himself from having that near-death experience, it's possible he's still afraid of ending up as a pathetic nobody. To prove this theory even more, the opening of the episode Christmas Guy has Lois walking into the living room holding Stewie, telling the family that Stewie will be going to his first Christmas carnival. Stewie then says, quote, "Again?" Number 6, the multiverse. Just came back from a Marvel movie and it seems that I can't escape the multiverse theory anywhere I go. So Family Guy is just one of those shows where anything can happen at any time. Like imagine you're walking up to get groceries. Next thing you know, a humanoid chicken just starts fighting you to the death. That's kind of what I mean. This theory suggests that when the show first got cancelled in 2002, only 3 years after its debut, the old universe was completely destroyed, which is why the show is much more different after its re-release. And I'm not talking about all the new production and all that stuff. This means that everyone in the show before are gone, and the characters we see now are people in a new universe. The statistical reason for the show being cancelled is that it was getting low ratings against its time slot competitors, but it seems that they had more outside the box ideas following it. After the show came back, the plot lines were wackier than ever, including meeting Jesus and even searching for the world's funniest joke. Remember that episode? That was a good episode. In the hump of our list, we have Stewie's dilemma. Many fans of the show have debated whether Stewie actually has a crush on Brian. And if you know, you know. While some viewers believe that Stewie's affection for Brian is romantic in nature, others argue that it's simply a case of Stewie mistaking his feelings of paternal or platonic love for romantic love. According to this theory, Stewie's dysfunctional upbringing has left him with a skewed understanding of love and relationships. Like his sister Meg, who is often shown to develop sudden infatuations due to her lack of love and affection at home, Stewie may be confusing his feelings of closeness and admiration for Brian as romantic love. However, this theory suggests that Stewie's connection to Brian is more akin to that of an uncle or even a second father figure, rather than a romantic interest. Stewie is portrayed as being closer to Brian than to his own father Peter, and in later seasons, Peter and Lois are shown to be distant from their children. This could lead Stewie to seek out emotional connections with other family members such as Brian. But as I mentioned in the beginning, if you know, you know. Number 4, Meg is Stewie's mom. I know what you're thinking, this is just gross to think about, but Reddit user Nathan Jackson 1996 thinks otherwise. According to this theory, Meg got pregnant by an ex-boyfriend who then left town, leaving her to give birth to Stewie. To cover up the scandal, Lois and Brian helped Meg keep the truth a secret and pass Stewie off as their own. One of the reasons this theory is so intriguing is that whenever Lois is shown giving birth to Stewie, it's always from the point of view in cutaway scenes. We never see the actual birth happen, which could imply that the woman everyone thinks is Stewie's mother may not be the real one. In the episode Partial Terms of Endearment, Lois even jokes that Meg gave birth to Stewie, and Meg doesn't seem to be confused or react to the statement, which could suggest there's some truth to it. If Meg really is Stewie's mother, it would add a whole new layer of depth to the relationship, making their tender moments all the more heartwarming. For instance, in Peter's Lost Youth episode, when Meg apologized to Stewie for leaving him in timeout for too long and they hug, it would take on a whole new meaning if they were actually mother and son. Number 3, CIA creating humanoid animals. In Family Guy, we see that some animals have human-like brains, opposable thumbs, and the ability to stand on their hind legs. This is usually explained by some as the next step in evolution or even as an act of God. As well, many people believe that the CIA are capable of transplanting brains into animals, which would mean that all the talking animals we see in the show are just a result of some messed up CIA experiment. So the theory claims that the CIA uses the brains of human subjects that are close to passing away and then puts them into an animal fetus whose brain isn't completely developed just so that it can hold the person's memories. As a result, human animals are not a cause for concern and are treated like any other minority. Number 2, Lois leaving Peter. There's a theory circulating that claims that Lois could be leaving Peter, or should I say Peter. In various episodes, Lois has dropped hints about her unhappiness with Peter's over-the-top antics, and even Stewie in a season 11 episode mentioned that she, quote, emotionally moved on. To add more fuel to that fire, Lois's wealthy father Carter has a history of hating Peter and even goes as far as offering her money to divorce him. So we know that she would be financially secure if she actually did so. Number 1, interbreeding. According to some fans, Chris, Megan, Stewie could be the products of interbreeding. And I know, pretty gross. This is kinda why I left this at the end. It all comes down to a reveal made in season 4 where Peter tells the family about their family history. And we find out that Peter's great-great-grandfather, Nate, married Lois's great-grandmother. This means that Peter and Lois are blood relatives, and their children could be the result of interbreeding. Now before you get too freaked out, let's take a closer look at this theory. Some fans believe that since Peter and Lois are very distant relatives, and after so many generations, any potential genetic problems wouldn't be an issue for their children. Others disagree, saying that the appearance of Peter's biological father, the Irish Mickey McFinnigan, in season 5 proves that Peter is not related to Nate Griffin at all. Regardless of the truth of the matter, it's worth noting that the Griffin kids are known for their special personalities. Whether or not this is due to inbreeding is up for debate, but it certainly adds a very interesting layer to the show's characters. Starting our list right at number 10, we have It's All in Peter's Head. For more than 2 decades, the characters of Seth MacFarlane's Family Guy has put themselves through increasingly absurd situations. Whether it's epic chicken fights or the Peter Copter, the Griffins have gone through situations that would be completely absurd in real life. However, in the world of the show, they can get away with just everything and be fine in just the next episode. So why is that? A Reddit fan theory suggests the reason why they do this is because the world of Family Guy takes place inside of Peter Griffin's head. Let's begin with his kids. We all know the unattractive daughter Meg. Well, it's said that she's actually a beautiful and popular teenager with a slight drinking problem. Meanwhile, Chris is actually a mentally challenged brother. Well, in the show, it kind of depicts that already. Theory says that one day she got too drunk and decided to pick up Chris, but ended up in a fatal car accident killing them both. This would explain why Peter dislikes Meg so much, especially because her issues caused the death of her brother. His wife Lois was broken down from the death of the children and decided to take her own life while having Stewie in the womb. Yes, this theory is really dark, so I'm sorry kids. With the loss of the entire family, Peter loses his mind and creates this whole fantasy world inside of his own head. As for Stewie, well, Peter never got to meet Stewie, which is why he's portrayed as a smart and cunning baby, because this is a reflection of how Peter expected his son to be. Coming at number 9, we have an allusion to the Twin Towers. First of all, rest in peace to all of those affected. But did you know that Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane was due to catch a flight that was destined to hit the Twin Towers? And his reason being was that he was hung over and overslept. Because I didn't know this, and I swear a lot of celebrities claim they just missed this tragedy. But this one is a little bit deeper than that. It was such an important event that fans thought it was the direct inspiration for the film's plot of Stewie having a near-death experience. Do you remember the scene where Stewie would get crushed by a falling lifeguard seat? Well, the scene is peppered with snippets of dialogue that may or may not reference the falling towers. Such as Stewie saying, quote, "Well then, it seems like there's only one thing to do. I must ensure that I had never gotten a close call with that lifeguard tower in the first place." And he also was saying, quote, "Yes, I did it. I stopped the tower from falling." This line struck out to me a lot because the falling tower was mentioned throughout the entirety of the film. Stewie's main goal was to go back in time to stop this tragedy. This moment could be attributed to the way Seth feels about missing the flight that was due to crash into the Twin Towers. That mixed feeling of guilt and relief is one of those feelings that are very hard to deal with, which could have inspired this traumatic episode in the first place. At our number 8 spot, we have the CIA is responsible for all humanoid animals. Do you remember that large chicken that would almost come out of nowhere and just start a full-on MMA fight with Peter? Well, his name is Ernie the Giant Chicken. Damn, I remember those fights, and I swear they would last just the whole show and be super chaotic and whatever. Well, a theory proposed by Reddit user Dalia Taylor states that the CIA and the Family Guy and even the American Dad series has the ability to put human brains into any other animal or human. Klaus from the sister show American Dad and Brian Griffin from Family Guy are both great examples of this because they are both intelligent humanoids that could potentially pose problems for the CIA, such as Klaus potentially beating the USA in the Olympics for skiing and Brian being a hardcore liberal. Humanoids appear all over the universe. It could very well be a brain swapping program used to control the population. We know how sketchy the government is, and even more so in these TV shows. At our number 7 spot, we have the multiverse. Just came back from a Marvel movie, and it seems like I can't escape the multiverse theory, even in my own favorite show. Family Guy is just one of those shows where anything can happen at any time. This theory suggests that when the show first got cancelled in 2002, only 3 years after its debut, the old universe was completely destroyed, which is why the show is much more different after its re-release. This means that everyone in the show before are gone, and the characters we see now are the people in a new universe. At our number 6 spot, we have Stewie manipulates time on a deeper level. We see Stewie zapping in and out of different time periods using his time machine. Casual thing for a baby, I might say. But have you noticed that Stewie always stays around the same age? It doesn't seem like he gets any bigger, nor does he look any different throughout the whole 20 years of the show. The other family members seem to age, but very slowly. For example, Meg started at 16 and now she's around 18. Lois turns 43 in that episode where she had a midlife crisis, and Brian started the series as 7 and just celebrated his 10th birthday this season. So back to Stewie. He makes himself young to avoid the responsibilities of being old. Do you remember that episode when Stewie went into the future only to see a depressing, sad version of himself? That's the type of reality Stewie wants to avoid. On another note, he could be doing it for Brian as well. Seeing Brian die for the first time traumatized him, and he openly admits that it's his best friend. So he could very well be doing it to prolong his time with Brian. Right in the hump of our list, we have Brian is the real writer of the show. In season 12, episode 9, named Peter Problems, we hear Brian saying, quote, "I have a job, I'm a writer, I'm working right now. See this? All of this? This is the raw material of a picture of life that I'm going to paint with words." This got fans thinking if Brian could be the writer of the show. We know that Seth MacFarlane writes the show in real life, and he uses his own voice to play Brian Griffin. He doesn't change it or anything. This could explain why Brian is often seen as the voice of reason, or is the one to dispute arguments and feuds between different characters. Most of the exclusive and deeper meaning Family Guy episodes are the ones with Stewie and Brian. And since Brian experienced these firsthand, it makes sense that these episodes are in more detail than any other. Number 4, we have Peter saved Lois's life. Reddit user Lemonade proposed a theory that Peter saved Lois from a life of depression and potentially worse. It's mentioned many times in the past that Lois was a drug addict in her days as a young adult. She has also shown bad tendencies such as being a kleptomaniac who is unable to resist the urge to steal. On top of that, her father is rich, but always seemed to be a little bit busy and would often neglect the young Lois. Being from a rich family meant that it was unlikely she faced the consequences for her actions. So picture this, a young rowdy girl with no discipline and an addiction to drugs. It almost seems like a recipe for disaster, all until Peter came along. Peter was mentally challenged at the time, so this gave a misdirected Lois an opportunity to take care of someone, which also slowed down her life in a good way. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Family Guy's All a Cover Up. Originally, everyone's lives in the show were amazing. Cleveland still had a wife, Joel had his son, and a loving marriage where his wife didn't cheat on him. Quagmire did the single life and his family probably wasn't tragic at this point. Peter was dumb but still managed to care for his family. Well, except for Meg. However, as the show progressed, everyone's lives took a turn for the worse. Peter and Lois will get into more frequent arguments, which led the two to be separated multiple times. Meanwhile, Cleveland lost his wife and his show, so when he came back, he gained a wife that still loves someone else. Quagmire started to hate on Brian aggressively, and he would often confess his love for his best friend's wife, Lois. Bonnie and Joe had a baby, but right after they would begin to hate one another. Even Brian died for a bit. At our number 2 spot, we have Joe Can Actually Walk. Joe is just known on the show as a character glued permanently to his wheelchair due to an accident in the past. Joe is often seen to act over the top emotionally, but is also used to insert awkward yet still funny humor, often regarding his disability. However, many fans believe that all of it is just a cover-up and he is actually able to walk. In many different episodes, Joe explains the origins of his disability, but each story is different from one another. In one backstory, Joe mentions that he got disabled due to fighting with the Grinch on a rooftop. In another backstory, he says that criminal Bobby Briggs is the one who shot him in the legs. Every story is different, and it just seems that he can't even get his story straight, which could potentially mean he's lying. Taking our number 1 spot, we have Stewie, Meg, and Chris are not Peter's kids. A fan theory suggests that Stewie, Meg, and Chris could not be Peter's children at all. Well, first of all, do we really think any one of them looks like Peter or Lois? In season 15, episode 20 named A House Full of Peters, it shows Peter donating his sperm to a sperm bank. The kids that shared the same sperm all pretty much look the same as Peter. So how could Stewie, Meg, and Chris not look like Peter at all? The theory states that back in the day, Lois had many affairs, and we could see that that isn't impossible, especially with her fishy past of adult filming and substance abuse. Well, there we have it. My favorite show may have just gone slightly ruined after hearing a bit of these theories. So which ones did you find interesting? Leave a comment down below with some of your thoughts. I'm your host Andrew, and we hope you have a scary day. Have you ever stopped and wondered how many times the Simpsons have predicted the future? From faulty voting machines that could have changed the whole US election to horse meat content in our own food, the Simpsons seem to have a profit working for them. Starting our list right at number 10, we have the God particle. There was a major breakthrough in 2012 called the Higgs boson, better known as the God particle. This explained how everything in the universe has a mass. However, it seemed that Homer Simpson discovered it well before 2012. Guess you can call him a genius. Because in a 1998 episode in season 10, Homer turns his attention to becoming an inventor, taking inspiration from Thomas Edison's life story. Surprisingly, during his time in the lab, Homer accidentally predicts the mass of the Higgs boson, or the God particle, as seen in the picture with his representation of donuts. So is the God particle a donut? Well, not exactly. According to scientists, if you work out the equation, you get the mass of a Higgs boson that's only slightly larger than the nanomass of the actual Higgs boson. Another scientist named Simon Singh claimed that the equation is a playful combination of various fundamental parameters like the Planck constant, the gravitational constant, and the speed of light. So I'll be the first to say it, Homer is not the scientist we want, for specific reasons, but he's in fact the scientist that we need. Coming at number 9, we have the 2013 horse meat scandal. Season 5, episode 19, in the episode Sweet Seymour Skinner's song that aired all the way back in 1994. Seymour gets fired due to pranks caused by Bart Simpson, with Flanders of all people replacing the principal. In a quick visual, we see lunch lady Doris rummaging for horse parts in a barrel to add to the school lunch. Attention, horse meat is back on the menu, boys. It's no surprise since we've seen Doris do much worse things like date Hans Molman or getting it on with groundskeeper Willie. Fast forward 19 years and the Safety Authority of Ireland discovered horse DNA in over 1/3 of beef burger samples from many supermarkets and ready meals all around the world. This would be known as a 2013 horse meat scandal. Guess horse racing is slowly changing into horse eating. At our number 8 spot, we have a baby cry translator. Season 3, episode 23. In the episode Brother Can You Spare Me 2 Dimes that aired all the way back in 1992. Homer's long-lost brother, Herb, helps create a device that could translate baby cries into real words. This device would have the ability to translate an infant's gibberish into full English sentences. Imagine if this could be done. Oh wait, it did. Fast forward 24 years, in 2016, Taiwanese scientists developed an app that could distinguish different crying sounds of a baby and translate into more common speech. Researchers said that the app can immediately decode a baby's crying sound within 15 seconds. So if you ever want to have a full-blown conversation with a baby, your time is now. Tragically, at our number 7 spot, we have the Seafried and Roy tiger attack. Sefred Fishbasher and Roy Hearn, the famous Vegas performers who worked with big game cats, were parodied by the show in 1993. The Simpsons predicted the horned tiger attack 10 years before it actually occurred. In the season 5 episode Springfield, Homer and Ned Flanders travel to Las Vegas where they meet Gunther and Ernst, which is basically a parody of Siegfried and Roy. Near the end of the episode, one of the duo's white tigers is shown attacking one of the performers. Then, 10 whole years later, in 2003, Horn actually suffered a career-ending injury after a tiger attacked him during a show. The prediction from afar seems remarkable, but the Simpsons production crew dismissed it by saying that it was bound to happen. Guess they spoke tragedy right into existence, and they were so right about it. With our number 6 spot, we have the faulty voting machines. Season 20, episode 4, which aired in 2008, Simpsons showed Homer trying to vote for Barack Obama in the US general election, but a faulty machine changed his vote. It showed Homer's vote change from Obama to his political rival John McCain. Now 4 years later, after the episode in 2012, Obama was up against Republican Mitt Romney. There was someone in Pennsylvania who filmed themselves voting, showing that the machine they were using was broken. Just like in the episode, the machine would switch the Obama picks with Mitt Romney picks. Right in the hump of our list, we have autocorrect. The Simpsons supposedly predicted the autocorrect feature in a 1994 episode. This feature wasn't invented until 2007. In this episode, Bully Dolph wrote the memo, "Beat up Martin" on his Apple Newton. Then the text autocorrects to "Eat up Martha." When Apple worked on the iPhone keyboard in 2007, rumors say that the engineers knew what they needed to get right, and that was the autocorrect feature. Could this be influenced from the show, or did The Simpsons predict yet another incredible technological feat? Coming in at number 4, we have a Nobel Prize. In season 22, episode 1, which aired in 2010, it showed Homer, Lisa, Milhouse, Martin, and others putting a pool together to bet on who would win the Nobel Prize for economics, chemistry, and other categories. We got to see the Nobel Prize for economics get announced, and while Jagdish Bhagwati won the fictional award on the animated TV show, Milhouse actually casted his vote on Bengt Holmstrom, previously shown on the paper. The thing is, he actually won the Nobel Prize 6 years later after the episode aired, which makes us rethink what's true at this point. Could Milhouse be the one behind Simpsons' predictive powers? Who knows? All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Canada legalizing weed. In a 2005 episode called Midnight RX, filmed during the show's 16th season, character Mr. Burns starts a chain reaction making prescription drugs affordable in Springfield, Illinois. Because of this, Homer and Grandpa Simpson started smuggling cheaper drugs from Manitoba, Canada, and found out that they were praised as heroes. On one of their future runs, they were joined by Apu and Ned. While in Canada, Ned meets a Canadian version of himself, set with a curly afro, but instantly starts taking a disliking to him after the counterpart tries to sell him a reeferino, which was legal there. Remember, this was back in 2005 when marijuana legalization wasn't even thought of. Then, fast forward 13 years later, in 2008, the prediction came true. Canada made cannabis legal in all provinces and territories. Time to add one more correct prediction in our list. All the way at our number 2 spot, we have FaceTime. Season 6, episode 19, which aired all the way back in 1995, Simpsons seem to have predicted commercial video calling. Remember, this is 1995. These were pre-internet days, and in this episode they show Lisa time travel to a time when she's having a face-to-face online chat with her mom Marge, which was virtually impossible at the time. Oddly enough, 15 years later, Apple re-announced their new and revolutionary FaceTime. But I don't really know what's so special about lagging out every single 2 minutes. But what about Skype? Well, first of all, Skype is almost dead, but Skype was released in 2003, which was still well before the making of this episode. Even though technology was leading to the discovery eventually, Simpsons always seemed to be ahead of the game. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have Donald Trump. 16 years before Donald Trump's win in the US elections, The Simpsons predicted the billionaire businessman would become the president. In season 11, in an episode called Bart to the Future, the show predicted a Trump presidency back in 2000. In the episode, Lisa is pictured sitting in the Oval Office surrounded by advisors, where Lisa said that, quote, "We're inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." The show also mocked Trump in an episode last year after he announced he was running for president. The show even featured a scene where Trump was seen waving from an escalator, almost exactly mirroring a video of him taken in 2015.
Starting off this list at number 10, we have Kamala Harris becoming president. So in season 11, episode 17, Lisa wore a purple suit with pearls as she was announced as being the president in an episode that was based on the future. On December 3rd, 2019, Kamala Harris officially ended her campaign to become the Democratic nominee for president, after stating she did not have enough funding to continue. She did not immediately endorse another Democratic candidate, but pledged to continue fighting to defeat Donald Trump, so she became vice president instead. Kamala Harris wore a purple suit during the Inauguration Day ceremony. Coincidence? Now at number 9 is the Big Ben going digital. In season 6, episode 19, also glancing into the future, Lisa falls in love with an English man. The two took a trip to England to meet his parents, and the episode showed the Big Ben clock tower having a digital display. It reappeared 17 seasons later next to the St. Beetle's Cathedral in the Holidays of Future Past episode. The Big Ben in fact hasn't rang and has been silent since 2017 for repairs, but are they going to be making any new additions? Coming in at number 8 is a force field. In season 11, episode 17, Bart is in a bar singing. The people aren't a very big fan, so they end up throwing their beer bottles at him. They, however, were not hurt because a red laser-like force field appeared in front of the stage. This one's kind of scary because, yeah, what if a force field was real to protect us, but also what if it could be used to trap us somewhere? An aerospace and defense company recently earned a patent for its first ever force field. The design submitted to the United States Patent and Trademark Office as a method and system for shockwave attenuation via electromagnetic arc. So basically like the one in Hunger Games, or in Cabin in the Woods. Taking our number 7 spot, we have robots stealing human jobs. In season 23, episode 17, it's career day and Homer is on stage talking about his job. The presenter talks about how all these jobs that people have could be replaced by robots, so they wouldn't have to do it. Obviously, for some jobs, people still have to be involved, but they've already developed machines to do a person's job. Those are machines, but it could be full robots one day like in The Simpsons. Moving on to number 6 is a hologram. In season 11, episode 17, Bart gets a knock at the door, and it's what looks like a mailman delivering him a hologram message. Now this seems cool and all, but what if holograms got really far developed and they were so good that we couldn't tell what's real and what's fake? Like in Spider-Man Far From Home, when the drones and Mysterio were creating a whole hologram around him, and he didn't know what was real. Researchers have created holograms that change from one image to another, something that could one day lead to the development of animated holograms. Halfway at number 5, we have virtual food. In season 11, episode 17, Homer and Marge are sitting at the kitchen table having virtual food. They say it doesn't taste very good, but eat it anyway. They're wearing what looks like a VR headset, but they have a black tube in their mouth that they are chewing on. I mean, we do have VR, so how really far off are we from developing something like that? A few years ago, 2 people from California went to New York to experience what's called a virtual augmented reality art and dining experience. They did it in a very similar way that The Simpsons had done it in the show, however they still ate real food. I guess virtual food is still a ways away. Now at number 4, we have Ivanka Trump runs for president. In season 28, episode 4, The Simpsons made a subtle point suggesting that the first daughter, Ivanka Trump, would run for president when Homer wore an Ivanka 2028 pin. Later in the same episode, it showed Ivanka taking over Ruth Bader Ginsburg's position on the Supreme Court. The episode was released in 2016, and Donald Trump didn't assume office until January 2017, so I guess they actually predicted Donald Trump's presidency. But say she did run against her father. Could it have come true? Here at number 3, we've got Living on Mars. In season 27, episode 16, Marge isn't happy when Lisa volunteers for a one-way trip to Mars. So Marge volunteers to go with her. The idea behind the exploration is to colonize Mars before 2026, a date that moves up to the end of the week. The takeoff fails, but Lisa and Marge make it to Mars in 2051. Only for Lisa to announce she wants to move to Venus. Elon Musk's SpaceX is currently developing a plan for Mars-bound cargo flights for as early as this year, but to fully colonize Mars would require an out-of-this-world budget, and we are already halfway through the year and they haven't yet. Coming in at number 2 is Hoverbus. In season 11, episode 17, we see a few-second clip of what looks like a city bus going by, but it's hovering just above the ground and it sounds electric. Now electric vehicles, that's something that's already been done, but not hoverbuses, or at least not yet. Chinese engineers were inspired by the inconveniences of traffic jams in the city and thought of a way out. They invented a hoverbus. Not exactly like the one in the show, but quite similar. A model of the transit elevated bus was inaugurated at the 19th China Beijing International High-Tech Expo. Now personally, I don't know how safe I'd feel with a hoverbus. What if it malfunctions and starts going up higher and higher and higher, and then it loses power and drops out of the sky? Or if you're crossing the street and it doesn't see you and goes by and chops your head off. I mean, maybe not, but we don't know. Now taking our number 1 spot is Bigfoot. In season 1, episode 7, while on a camping trip, Homer is mistaken for Bigfoot after falling into mud and is captured by scientists for observation. But it was really Bart who encountered the real Sasquatch in 2002 while exiting a bus in Canada. I mean, Bigfoot being real, I'm not too sure, but then again, what can we really say about photos like these? Guess we'll never know. And that wraps up this video for the top 10 Simpsons scary predictions that almost came true. If you guys have any video suggestions, make sure to leave them in the comments section below. I'm your host, Michaela, and I'll see you guys next time.